Good morning. I'm Margaret Miller, Director of the Institute for Research in Art, which is the Contemporary Art Museum and Graphic Studio. We're glad you're all here this morning, and we welcome you not only this morning, but tonight to the opening reception for the Berni Searle exhibition, Approach. I'd like to take a moment to recognize some of our special guests, who of course will be introduced to you in a moment as part of the panel, but since they've come such a long distance, I do want to introduce to you Sophie Perrier, Director of Michael Stevenson Gallery, who just arrived last night from Cape Town, and she told us it was about a 40-hour trip to get here, so we're very thrilled to have her. Also like to recognize Mark Coetzee, Director of the Rubel Family Foundation in Miami, who's long had an interest in Berni Searle's work and been supportive of her, and of course we've had many strong relationships or good relationships with the Rubel family, and we look forward to more. I also want to introduce and recognize Lorianne Farrell, curator at the Museum of African Art in New York, and a contributing essayist to the catalog. The Institute for Research in Art was first introduced to Berni Searle while she was in residence at USF through the Stuart S. Golding Endowed Chair held by the School of Art and Art History in the College of Visual and Performing Arts. Two of her installations, Profile and Snow White, were included in the exhibition The Field's Edge, Africa Diaspora Lens, guest curated for the Contemporary Art Museum by Rory Bester and Amanda Carlson in 2000. Alexa Favada, the Associate Director, has curated and organized this exhibition, and she has kept in touch with Berni and followed her artistic development achievements since that time. In 2004, Alexa suggested that we might consider Berni for a contemporary art museum and graphic studio project. In keeping with our profile of working with international artists, we decided to offer a commission for a new work to Berni Searle that would premiere at the Contemporary Art Museum and be organized as a traveling exhibition. Alexa has served as the curator and organizer of this project. To support this endeavor, the faculty and staff of the Institute for Research in Art have been very successful in obtaining support. We, for the first time, were able to get a grant from the Nimoy Foundation for the Berni Searle residency. We also received a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts, the Arts Council of Hillsborough County with the Hillsborough County Board of Commissioners, and another grant from the Florida Department of State, Florida Arts Council, Division of Cultural Affairs. So the project has really received already recognition in these arenas. It's now my great pleasure to introduce to you Alexa Favada, who will give you additional remarks about the project and introduce our panelists this morning.
Thank you, Margaret. Welcome, everyone. It is really my pleasure to have so many of my friends from South Africa here today. It's been a long time working on this project, and I can't thank everyone enough for your support, and Berni, for your perseverance throughout this entire endeavor. Everyone here has such distinguished backgrounds that I'm just going to introduce them one at a time to you today, and Berni's going to start off our presentation. I will say that we're just delighted with her new project, Alibama, that she's done for us. That was the commission that she's established. I'll tell you a little bit about Berni. She was born in Cape Town, South Africa, and received her BFA and MFA degree from the University of Cape Town. She's actually still based there. She was Berni has become one of the most visible of South African artists, increasingly peripatetic, undertaking art projects now and participating in exhibitions across the globe. Berni actually began as a three-dimensional artist working in the media of sculpture. However, she now uses 16mm film to create stunning 3 and 2 and single-channel video projections. Searle's work has been represented at a number of group exhibitions, including Dakar in Senegal and Distinguished Identities, the Contemporary African Portraiture at SUNY New York. She's coming up with 3 very important shows one of them here at the Art Museum and the other one at the Johannesburg Art Gallery that'll open later in November. She also has a residency in New York this year, so she'll be traveling between Graphic Studio, working on a project there, and New York and Philadelphia as well. Her upcoming group exhibitions include Venice, Istanbul, and her big show that's opening at the Brooklyn Museum. She's been included in an exhibition curated by Maura O'Reilly and Linda Nochlin called Global Feminisms, which is a broad show that has invited over 100 artists from around the world. It's my pleasure to introduce Berni Searle.
Thank you, Alexa. I need to just adjust this mic. I'm really happy to be able to be here. It's been about 4 years in the making. The prospect of this exhibition and the publication has really been an ongoing dialogue about it, and I'm really glad that it's manifested itself in the form of this symposium and the exhibition and the accompanying catalogue. And I would like to thank the Institute, both Alexa and Margaret, for their ongoing interest in the work. And of course, the panelists, Mark Coetzee and Laurie, who have been, Laurie I've worked with on a number of different projects, and she will speak about my work probably in relation to some of those. And for me, it's quite interesting that Mark is on a panel because he gave me my first solo show in Cape Town in 1999. It's, 7 years later, and here we are in... It was only 7 years ago, actually, Mark. So it's really nice to share a platform with you. And really, I'm just going to be talking about my work and introducing my work. Because the show is not up yet, I will talk about some of the work that's on the show, but I'll also fill in some gaps in terms of what won't be on the show itself. I really started my first body of work for exhibition and as a professional artist in 1999, and it really did start with the Color Me series, which was the exhibition called Color Me that I did at the it was called the Mark Coetzee Fine Art Cabinet. And just to speak about the context, this was 1999, so coming out of the first democratic elections in South Africa. It was a time, as it was, I suppose, just prior to that as well, a time where artists were expressing ideas about their immediate environment. So with the opening up of new exhibitions, new possibilities, really a different dispensation politically in South Africa, I think people were still trying to find ways of grappling with this transition and trying to come to terms with what it is they'd come out of. So this body of work I call the Color Me series, and as Alexa mentioned, I come from a sculpture background, but I found the medium of photography and video far more direct, and of course the possibility for exploring performance elements within the work was far more, was for me offered a number of opportunities to express myself more directly in terms of issues of identity. And at that time, I think aspects of nationalism, national identity was very much, as a country in transformation, was very much what was on people's minds. And I think a few years afterwards, people had an opportunity maybe not to focus so narrowly on those kind of broader political issues, but to look at more personal histories and how that has been impacted by the experiences that we had just come out of. So the Color Me series, I covered myself in various spices and had myself photographed. And initially it was meant to be for a project, one project, but the process of actually photographing myself gave or delivered so many possibilities that it became a series, of which I will just show you a few examples. I had used spices previously in an installation at the castle, which was part of the second Johannesburg Biennale, which was curated by the show called Life's Little Necessities, was curated by Kelly Jones. And in that context, in the castle, I used spices as a historical reference to the trade around that part of the continent. In the Kalami series, I think it takes on more of a personal reference in that I thought about what it was that connected me to a particular heritage, and my great-grandfathers come from Mauritius, Saudi Arabia, Germany, and the UK. So it really is quite a diverse heritage, and I began to think about how that impacted on me, or if there was any way at all that I was connected to this. And so one of the very tentative ways that I thought I was connected was through food, and the way in which, that is not to say that I eat curry and make roti all the time, but it became a starting point for exploring these various connections. Of course, with a title like Kalami, it plays on the categorization colored, which I try to resist in the work in various ways, by either challenging the viewer in terms of the gaze, or I would like to, for me it was about presenting myself in different imaginary ways to counter the way in which I had been defined and described within that particular dispensation. And so the process really rendered a number of possibilities which developed into the Kalami series, and it takes the form of either two-dimensional wall installations, or much to the horror of my mother, on public billboards in Cape Town. And out of the series, I think my first video, which was Snow White, which is not, we're not showing it here, but I did want to just show a part of it to make the connection between the Kalami series and my first video work, which was commissioned for the show Authentic Eccentric, which is part of the Venice Biennale in 2001. And now I just have to find a way to get to the bottom of the screen. Maybe a few smaller. Okay, and it's more or less at number 10. And now I can, let's say, double size. Oh, that's far too big. Actual size. Sorry. No, it's going to distort. I don't want it to fit the screen. I actually just want it to be small. I'm just going to show a part of it. It's a double screen projection installation, and the projections are installed on either side of a room, so that you actually, within the space itself, you're not able to view two screens simultaneously. You actually have to, when you're looking at the one screen, something else is happening. And there's something about the simultaneity of presenting it as an installation, two different views, exactly the same time of the same performance or ritual, which in this case uses cake flour. And the body itself becomes transformed in a number of ways, and so the view opposite this would be the aerial view, the camera from the top on the opposite side, if you could imagine that. And I eventually dust off the flower and constitute it in a pile as if I would be making, stacking up flour and creating a hole in the center. And I proceed to make dough, which I then, I'm just going to go a little bit forward so that you can see a bit more of it. And it evokes, that is the aerial view. I just want to go a little bit back. While it evokes the process of making roti, it isn't an illustrative a demonstration of how to make. It really is, it's become a lot more abstracted, and it really is the reconstitution of a particular material in relation to the body that then takes on a different form and has the potential to further take on different forms. So this is a process that I do twice or thrice in the piece. So the Snow White work really comes out of the Color Me series, and I think the next, sorry, I'll just go back to that. The next body of work that I did, which was also kind of 99, 2000, was a series again dealing with the body and the impact, I suppose, of various substances on the body. And in this body of work, it was called the Discolored series. I used black Egyptian henna, which left a purplish bluish stain that resembled bruises, and I chose the most vulnerable parts of the body, which are not often exposed. So the palms of the hands, the small of the back, nape of the neck, under the belly, and the soles of the feet. And at the time, it's, while they are one, I can see this work in terms of developing out of the context of the Truth and Reconciliation Commissions, which really was a platform that people used to testify against gross human rights violations in South Africa. And I produced a piece for an exhibition called Truth Veils, which was connected to this commission. And, in the process of staining different parts of the body, there are lots of things that happen that are not predictable. For example, the softer parts of the body actually didn't take a lot of the stain. The harder parts of the body became really, this is the installation view. And the harder parts of the body really took the stain a lot more. It's interesting in the way in which aspects of trauma are inscribed on the body, not necessarily in a physical way, but in a more psychological and emotional way, which I think is far more difficult to pinpoint and to describe than than testifying to gross human rights violations. And I just wanted to be able to express something about that inability to gauge how trauma is experienced, absorbed, and absorbed through the body. And so these are segments of the palm of the hand, which in themselves are quite ambiguous, and when put together forms an installation which is part called Lifeline, which is part of the exhibition. These are a few more examples from this series. Called Conversing with Pain, P-A-N-E, and photographed under a pane of glass as if examining a specimen or trying to find out more about what actually lies beneath the surface. Okay, this was my cue for the for the video, which I've already spoken about. These are just some videos still showing the simultaneous views. And I think those were the two bodies of work that really dealt more explicitly and more directly with the pressing kind of political concerns of the time. And I think since then the work has kind of become a bit less about that. I don't believe that you can ever entirely avoid the kind of impact of where you're coming from. But I think that as an artist, one needs to be able to continue to firstly, be engaged in the process of creating, and then to develop one's work in a more nuanced way, and I think I've tried to do that and more and more in the work as I've gone along. So this was 2002. It's a piece called Profile, and this was the piece that was shown here as an installation in which I pressed various objects into my cheeks. The previous one is it's an anti-apartheid. It's an anti-riot shield. So anybody who belonged to the anti-riot squad would have got a shield like this to put on your mantelpiece. So these are just, it was an exhibition about frontiers and boundaries, and I just looked at more personal aspects of those boundaries, which I thought had impacted on me. So that's a traditional beaded ornament. A spoon, a kind of souvenir. It's with a British crest on it. Linking, I think, to a colonial experience of British, Dutch in the Cape. These are cloves, whole cloves, and I'd used cloves previously in its ground form. The brown in the Kalame series is actually ground cloves. The idea being with cloves that it's a natural anesthetic, and it numbs, it makes you numb and takes away the pain. And then there's a Catholic reference. My full name is Bernadette, and so that's I was just looking at various aspects of my experience that could inform, or not inform who I am, but just to consider how they might impact. And I think by presenting them, this is an Arabic prayer, by presenting them in prints that you can see through and that you can move around, they become layered and change as you move. And so to present, it's important for me to be able to present it as not anything that's static, that's in a constant state of flux in terms of how I identify myself at any point in time. I think moving on from there, one of my first projects that I was commissioned to do outside of South Africa was in the south of Spain. And the location, before I actually went there, for me it was an interesting, what stood out for me about this place was that that one could see Africa across the sea. So you were in one continent in Spain, but you could see the other continent, and I was interested in what the impact was on both sides of that strait. And one of the real problems relating to that, I mean, it's an area that's so rich in history and fascinating in terms of particularly the contribution of the Arab world in Spain. But one of the pressing things at that time was the migration of people across the strait, often with very drastic consequences. So these are some prints from it. The piece is called Home and Away, and it is in the exhibition. So I'm not going to talk about it too much. These are some prints relating to the piece. In the piece, I whisper and I conjugate the verbs to love, to fear, and to leave. And by changing the subject positions, but the subject positions of who it is that loves or fears or leaves. There's an ambiguity in terms of who they are and who we are. And of course raises questions about how we identify ourselves in terms of the other. Progressively, there's an element of danger which is suggested by the introduction of black ink into the water. Also a reference to the way in which the squid protects itself once it senses danger. And the area around the water around the body becomes progressively darker and ambiguous. This is really not a very, it's kind of not a good quality slide, but eventually the ink spreads. These are all underwater photographs. Again, giving it a very ambiguous quality. I mean, that looks like a fire, but it's actually the ink spreading underwater with the light shining through the ink. I'm just going to rush ahead because I've just checked the time and it's already past, and I'm supposed to have 20 to 30 minutes. So the next video, so increasingly from about 2001, I've worked more with film. And this is a piece that I produced in 2000 called Vapor, and it is part of the exhibition. But it involves an event in Cape Town where people, at the time of Eid, the Muslim celebration of Eid, they cook in these huge pots. And each of these pots come from different families. And apart from the fact that it was just visually a very interesting and arresting event, it, for me, comments on this kind of a very tight-knit community. They cook food in the spots and the food gets distributed. And it, for me, shows a very strong sense of connection to community. I didn't cook food in the pots, though. I replaced the food with water so that it could somehow suggest a kind of building up of pressure and a sense of release in that process. And this is a print from that series. And this is just moving ahead now. In 2005, again linking to the idea of family and community, but more in terms of a loss of, for various reasons, both politically and on a more personal level, I am estranged from half of my heritage. And so my work often deals with the loss or the way in which I feel I cannot connect rather than the way in which I connect. So this one is called On Either Side, and these are based, they're cutouts on crepe paper of various family members that I actually never knew because they were classified differently. But this body of work is not just about racial classification. That's just one aspect, I think, which alienates people from each other. But so these are cutouts based on photographs, which then leave traces. And these are prints. I'm just going to go through a few of them. The central person in each of these images is my grandmother that I only got to know very, very later and not for long. And the video piece that comes out of it is called About to Forget, and this is an installation of that. And because it's not on the exhibition, I'd just like to show it, and it's not a very long piece. It's 3 minutes, so maybe I'll just show a part of it, and if anybody wants to have a look later. So, where's my DVD player? There we go. The installation image is as it was installed at the Australian Centre for the Moving Image in Melbourne. This is called About to Forget. The piece itself is shot in a bath, so presented on this scale, which is the installation itself is about 12 meters across. There's a kind of monumentality that really is, quite different in terms of how it was made. Not even 3 minutes. Okay. I'm just going to move on very briefly to the more recent work, which I'm very happy to be able to show here, which is an installation called Nightfall, triple screen projection, which actually, it's only the second time it's being seen, so I'm still trying to absorb it myself. The first screening was at the Michael Stevenson show at the gallery in Cape Town. And it is a triple screen projection. Now I'll just put that. We'll go back to that and this I'm not sure how to do this any other way. It's a performance piece on a huge mound of red grape skins, crushed grape skins. So it's really after the process of making the wine, it's the leftovers, it's the smelly, rotty kind of debris that's left. And I was teaching in Stellenbosch, which is really an area that is well known for making wines, and was struck again in the same way as with vapor visually by these huge mounds of grape skins and the smells as you drove through this landscape. And I think it's a piece that sits somewhere between a dream and a nightmare, and really kind of emphasizes a kind of journey in terms of negotiating and navigating this mound. I think while I can speak about particular references to the Western Cape in relation to wine and winemaking and the tot system, I think that the work itself goes beyond the specifics of any particular kind of message about the process or the impact socio-politically of let's say winemaking or even globally. And I think that what I'm trying to touch on more is aspects of vulnerability and I suppose ambiguity in terms of what it is that makes one vulnerable within this context. Okay, and then the last piece that I want to talk about very briefly is the Alabama, which is the commission piece and is in various stages of progression still. And so the Alabama, is just a bit of background, is a song. It's based on a song that's sung and is very popular in Cape Town, but not just in Cape Town. I've discovered it forms part of the California Boys Choir repertoire, the Miami Boys Choir. It's sung by white Afrikaans singers, by the Boy Scouts, and actually relates with the Commission for Tampa. I tried to think about, I've been to Tampa a few times, and for me, being in a place is often what sparks off an idea for a piece. And it didn't happen when I was in Tampa. So it happened when I was in Cape Town, and I thought, well, you know, what are the potential links? I've also always wanted to do something around the practice of a carnival in Cape Town, which is quite specific and which is also very problematic in terms of stereotypical associations with these festivals. But it developed out of slavery, and it's every second New Year people parade in the streets, and there's a repertoire that they have in terms of the songs that they sing, a lot of them Dutch, and also a mixture of English and Afrikaans. So this is a practice, but historically, the song Alabama comes from the sighting of a U.S. ship in Table Bay Harbor in 1863. And it's really, you know, the fact that something that happened so long ago that really comes out of a very different context still lives on in the memories in different variations in a place like Cape Town today. So it initially relates to the ship coming in over the harbor, but then it gets layered, and no one actually knows exactly what those layers mean. Not even the historians can actually say, but basically, I think what happened was, so this is my interpretation of this layering, is that there was another ship, a smaller ship that was named the Alabama, which carried reeds for young Muslim brides that beds were made out of. And so it's a kind of mixture of the historical and the more culturally specific aspects of a tradition in Cape Town. And as I say, the work is going to, I'm just going to show a short piece because I know I'm completely over time. And so in the tradition of layering, I recorded, specifically I wanted a Malay choir as opposed to a troupe, because a troupe, there are all these kind of, like I say, stereotypical associations with the minstrel that I really needed to avoid reinforcing in this piece. So the Malay choirs sing this. Firstly, the tradition of singing in a Malay choir is a tradition that is passed on. And so in the piece itself, I've I've asked them to sing it in a way that I wanted them to sing it, because it's so much associated with this kind of spectacle and performance. The Malay choirs actually compete and sing these songs, so there's a greater sense of, I think, where the song is coming from, and it doesn't, because of wanting to avoid the kind with this practice. It's layered with my teaching my son to sing the Alibama. In the process, he falls asleep. But the piece really has got a very it has a kind of lulling quality. But really, this is something, it's part of an oral tradition which, in my own way, I am continuing in the process. The piece is originally shot in color, and it's just very recently been changed to black and white. And it's partly because I think there's a very nostalgic feel to the lyrics, and as beautiful as the sunset is over Table Bay, I wanted to be able to express something about the historical connection. And there are elements in this view over Table Bay that also suggest a very different reality to the kind of beautiful, pristine sunset, which of course is Robben Island. Like I said, different layers have been added. One layer is the singing of the months of the year, which can be interpreted as a build up to the end of the year. But there were also names given to slaves.
August, September, October, November, December. August, September, October, November, December. January, February, March, April, May, June, July.
Okay, I'm going to end my presentation. I've gone long over, but it's really difficult to speak about so much in such a short space of time. I'm not sure what the procedure is now. I think...